The Oppo Find N is one of the best foldable smartphones available in 2022, but you'll likely never get your hands on one. The Oppo Find N might just be the next favorite foldable instead of the much talked about foldable from Samsung. Considering Oppo's first foldable phone, the Find N, Samsung will struggle to keep the bendy handset all to itself. Not only does the Oppo Find N match the Z Fold 3 specs in terms of display and hinge quality, but it also comes in a form factor that is as cute to look at and carry around as it is more practical than what Samsung did with the Fold line. Despite several superior specs and design achievements, the Find N's starting price of $1,200 is less than that of the Z Fold 3. Unless, of course, you import, in which case the fee will be higher. Foldable smartphones are the next big thing, with companies including Motorola, Xiaomi, Huawei, Samsung, and now Oppo all dabbling with the foldable form factor. Despite being comparatively late out of the gate with the Oppo Find N, the company seems to have struck gold, with features, design, and functionality that often surpass the competition and at a cheaper price point too. The only catch? It's a China-only smartphone for now, with no plans for Oppo to release the Find N internationally. And that's a massive disappointment, considering the stellar foldable experience on offer. Design. The design of Oppo N is solid, robust design and impressive hinge system with no visible gap. In some ways, the Oppo Find N is a very familiar device. It has the same internal fold that opens like a book as key competitors such as the Huawei Mate X2 and the Samsung Galaxy Z Fold 3. But it has a few key differences that could make it the best foldable design to date. The size of the outer display is the most noticeable. Where the Mate X2 and Z Fold 3 are closed, they're almost comically long and slender, with tall, narrow aspect ratios that look a little strange, particularly Samsung's 25:9 aspect ratio. The Oppo Find N, on the other hand, has a compact 5.49 display with an 18:9 aspect ratio for a more typical slab smartphone experience when folded, as well as being much more compact in the pocket than its competitors. The bezel around the outer display is slightly thicker than on 2022 flagships, and there's a centrally placed hole punch camera that's wider than some might prefer. But these aren't elements that detract from the overall experience. You won't notice it after a day or two of using it. When folded, the phone feels reassuringly sturdy, with a near-complete seal that keeps dust and dirt away from the internal display and hinge when placed in a pocket. The odd bit of dust or lint may still appear, but it's nowhere near as concerning as the visible gap on the Z Fold 3. A piece of paper can be inserted between the two halves of the Find N and remain perfectly in place. It may not seem like much, but for foldable, it's a big deal. The only disadvantage of using the Oppo Find N when folded is its weight and thickness, which are similar to that of its competitors. When folded, it's essentially a two-phone sandwich, measuring 15.9 millimeters thick, nearly 1.5 millimeters thicker than the Mate X2 and Z Fold 3, though it's marginally lighter than Huawei's option at 275 grams. The hinge system is an important part of any foldable, and Oppo's is about as sturdy and secure as you'll get in 2022, though it's nearly impossible to unfold one-handed due to the lack of grooves on the side of the phone. Like Samsung's foldable, you can anchor the display partially for a versatile laptop-like viewing experience, but it lacks the software support, particularly in third-party apps like YouTube, that the Z Fold 3 provides. When fully opened, you're greeted by a large 7.1 display with similar bezels and an identical circular camera cutout, though this time it's moved to the top left, where it's more easily overlooked. Aside from the internal plastic display, how else would it fold? The Find N is made of a metal and glass combination. Oppo has spent a lot of time and effort on the fine details, such as the design for fine detailing on the hinge and a glass back with a subtle sparkle, to make it look and feel like a premium device. It's also available in 3 different colors: black, white, and purple, allowing you to customize your look. Though the cover display and glass rear are protected by Gorilla Glass Victus for added drop protection, there is no official water resistance rating, unlike the Galaxy Z Fold 3's IPX8 certification. However, the overall form factor and solid hinge of the Oppo Find N make it one of the best foldable designs on the market right now. Displays. Both of the Find N's displays sport AMOLED tech for a bright, vibrant experience with colors that pop out of the screen. And if that's not to your taste, the vibrancy can be adjusted in the settings menu. That's essentially where the similarities end though, as, unlike Huawei and Samsung, Oppo's foldable offers a different refresh rate across the two screens. Even though low-cost phones now frequently feature a 120Hz display, Oppo decided to limit the 120Hz refresh rate to the inner 7.1 display and limit the cover display to 60Hz. It's easily the weakest point of the front-facing display, and it's especially noticeable when switching between the two screens. Another point of differentiation is the resolution, which falls just short of Full HD at 988 by 1972, while the internal display is HHD+, 1792 by 1920. It is a slight resolution downgrade from the Mate X2 or Z Fold 3. Despite the limited refresh rate and the fact that I had a large expansive internal display at my disposal, the familiar aspect ratio and compact dimensions of the cover display meant I found myself using it more frequently than expected, particularly when out and about. It's also by default display for some apps, as the internal display's near square 8.4 to 9 aspect ratio isn't ideal for all. Instagram, for example, loads slightly oddly in the unusual aspect ratio, struggling to display full images on the screen, requiring you to scroll to see a portrait-style photo or video. Some apps handle this better than others. TikTok and Reddit play very nicely with the large display, and you can force apps to use a windowed 16 to 9 or 4 to 3 crop of the app for a more traditional experience. But it's not perfect for all apps. What it excels at is running two apps side by side, a function activated by running two fingers down the center of the internal display. That makes it simple to monitor Twitter while texting with friends on WhatsApp, though I'm sure Oppo has more productivity-focused use cases in mind. The form factor is also ideal for reading articles, browsing the web, and zooming in on photos taken on your phone. It's also useful for video chats, which Huawei's option lacks due to the lack of an internal selfie camera. Of course, the big caveat to foldable tech is the crease in the display. Yes, there is a crease, and yes, you can still feel it if you run your fingers over it. But the central vertical position of the hinge means that doesn't happen very often, and it's much less prominent than early foldable. If you're looking straight on at the display, you probably won't be able to see the crease at all. It's only when viewed off-angle that you can see the warped reflection the flexible display causes. It's surprisingly robust too, with no fear or worry that I'd damage the screen or hinge by pressing on it too hard. Camera. Huawei's foldable Mate X2 offers flagship-level cameras, whereas Samsung took a more conservative approach with a trio of 12-megapixel cameras on its Galaxy Z Fold 3. Oppo finds a happy medium between the two, with a main wide 50-megapixel snapper, a 16-megapixel 100 and 23-degree ultra-wide, and a 13-megapixel 2x telephoto capable of capturing impressive shots with a tap. You'll likely find yourself using the main 50-megapixel snapper most of the time, thanks to impressive specs including an 1.8 aperture for decent low-light performance, multi-directional phase detection autofocus, PDAF, and optical image stabilization, OIS. It's the only one of the three lenses that offer the stabilization tech. The main lens captures images that are bright, vibrant, and incredibly detailed, even in difficult lighting conditions, such as photographing with the sun in the background. The dynamic range on offer is impressive, capturing as much detail in the sky as in the shadows. Skin tones are accurate, and colors are not as saturated as on some flagships. Despite the resolution drop when switching to the 16-megapixel ultra-wide, images taken are near indistinguishable in terms of detail and color accuracy, something that can't be said of all premium smartphones, let alone foldable. It's not quite as impressive in low light, and there is notable lens distortion around the edges, but it's excellent for capturing expansive shots with great detail and dynamic range. Oppo has done an admirable job at tuning the three lenses to closely match in terms of color accuracy and dynamic range, allowing you to essentially mix and match shots between all three without any notable difference. The only area the Oppo Find N struggles is low-light photography, with only the main lens offering the OIS needed for great handheld night photography. Even when using the main lens, the dedicated night mode isn't as good as the best slab-style flagships, including Oppo's Find X5 Pro. Software. The software will likely be the biggest issue for Westerners that want to import the Oppo Find N. As with a China-only focus, it doesn't ship with Google Play. What it does come with, however, is a lot of bloatware in Chinese apps that are yet to be translated into English. That's a theme across the OS. While most of Oppo's ColorOS 12 has been translated, you'll occasionally come across a menu or an app only available in Mandarin. That includes Oppo's App Store that you'll need to use to update some of the stock apps on the phone. That being said, it is incredibly easy to get the Google Play Store onto the phone, and once installed, it behaves as you'd expect most of the time. You can download apps, install third-party keyboards, Board works way better than the default keyboard, and even use Google Pay in place of Oppo's mobile payment app. There are still limitations, like the lack of Google Assistant activation. You're forced to use Brino, Oppo's China-focused virtual assistant, and limitations on Android Auto, but largely speaking, it's business as usual. There are plenty of software tweaks in ColorOS 12 that allow you to take advantage of the foldable form factor too. That includes an intuitive split-screen experience on the larger internal display, the ability to force any app to use the boxy aspect ratio, and the option to use the cover display as a camera viewfinder when taking snaps on the internal display, giving your subject a preview of the snap you're taking. It's small details like this that elevate the software experience on the Oppo Find N. And while it's not perfect for Westerners, it gets me very excited about future Oppo Foldable, especially amongst rumors that the Find N could make an appearance in the West as a OnePlus Foldable, complete with Oxygen-OS. It's worth noting that while it runs ColorOS 12, Oppo's Android 12 skin, the Oppo Find N ships with Android 11 in the box, with no word on if or when it'll get an update to the nearly year-old Android 12 or the incoming Android 13. Price and availability. The biggest problem with the Oppo Find N is that it's a China exclusive, with no plans for the foldable to roll out internationally in its current form. OnePlus rumors aside, that means you'll have to import one from China, and with it comes extra import fees and the need to sideload Google Play and related services onto the phone yourself. That won't be a problem for some, but it's not quite as simple as being able to order one from a local retailer or carrier. It's a shame because it's one of the most affordable foldable to date, with the Oppo Find N starting at an impressive 7,669 yen, approximately 910 pounds, $1,210 in China, undercutting even Xiaomi's Mi Mix Fold, which costs 9,999 yen. The Oppo Find N is the most exciting foldable phone that you'll probably never be able to buy, at least without importing one from China. This is a stellar attempt at a book-style foldable, with premium build quality that surpasses that of Huawei and Samsung in most regards. The small 5.49 cover display provides a more traditional smartphone experience compared to comically tall alternatives, while also providing a smaller pocketable footprint. The hinge system is robust and well-built, with no visible gap between the two halves of the display when closed, and the expansive 7.1 in the internal display looks great, with no noticeable crease when viewed head-on. Throw in an impressive performance, a strong suite of cameras, and multi-day battery life, and you've got a stellar foldable smartphone. Let's just hope it makes it to the West officially one day.